My bonding proposal is about putting thousands of unemployed Minnesotans back to work. Some of the men and women who are here today, I thank them for being here to witness how important this bill is for the future of unemployed Minnesotans. The bill is also about investing in the future of our state, for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren, Mitch's generation. One national study claims that a $1 billion bonding bill creates 28,000 jobs. The math says then that a $775 million bonding bill, which I'm proposing today, would then create up to 21,700 jobs. Skeptics can divide and doubt, but the indisputable fact is that this bill would put many thousand Minnesotans to work. And almost all of those jobs would be in the private sector, something that is not understood by everyone in the two chambers upstairs. These public investments create private sector jobs. The contractors and subcontractors are almost all private sector companies. They employ workers in the private sector. These are exactly the jobs that we all say we want to increase in Minnesota. Well, here's our chance. My proposal is also a critically important investment in our state's future, in our schools, colleges, and universities, in our downtowns of major cities, in exciting new technology, as we will hear shortly from Austin, Minnesota, in better transportation, enhancing our natural resources for ourselves and for future generations. The timing could not be better. Interest rates are low. The need for these investments is high. In fact, there were more than double this amount of requests, good requests, from around the state. And Minnesotans need jobs. I urge the legislature to consider this proposal at the beginning of its session and to pass a bonding bill for my signature by the end of February. In that way, many of these projects and the jobs they will provide can begin this year. The delay in passing last year's bonding bill until July meant that many of those projects could not begin in the same year. Unemployed Minnesotans need jobs now, not next year. It's our responsibility here at the Capitol to work on the people's timetable, not our own. The time to act is now. I'll respond to questions later, but first let me introduce Dr. Jian Dong, who is the Executive Director of the Hormel Institute in Austin.
Thank you, Governor Dayton. I'm so happy and so glad to be here and so happy, Governor, to choose our institute expansion for the total we requested 13.5 million, and the total project this one is 25 million, and we will create not only the construction job right away, but also will create more than 120 new jobs, forever to Austin, Minnesota. So these jobs are high-tech job, is a medical research job, and this it's not easy to bring this job to Austin, to rural area of Minnesota. So we are so happy and so proud, we can be part of this bonding bill, and the rest of the construction and the money is already fundraised by the local community from the private fundraising activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Ms. Beverly Dusso, who's the President and Executive Director of the Tubman House, and she's another proposed recipient of the bonding.
Good morning, good morning. We think that Tubman is a perfect example of what Minnesota would want to do, and we hope this is why the governor included this in his proposal. We have an extraordinary building. It is originally built by McGough years ago, designed by those visionary Benedictine sisters who built a building to last 200 years. That means there's 150 years of reuse left in an extraordinary structure, and we very much think the request that we have here of $3.4 million will go a long way to securing that in the future. What are we going to do? Well, the first thing we've got to do is make the building safe. We have people who live there and who learn there, and we need to make the actual architectural building safe for children because many of them will be using it in the future. We need to be able to meet codes, accessibility, you know, the sprinklers and all the unglamorous things that make life safe and allow services to go forward. We need to be able to serve those who are struggling with family violence, mental and chemical health issues, young people and the elderly across the state where we provide services for them, their caregivers, and those that take care of them in nursing and other homes for the elderly. And finally, we need to make this a place where it is a sound investment for Minnesota. Why is this a sound investment? First of all, we're reusing it, which is far less costly than building new. Second, this appropriation will allow 35 to 40,000 people just served out of and through that site. And finally, this is, we think, a very smart investment because of these wonderful people up here. Not only will we save over $15,000 a month in public safety dollars if we can get it when we can move into this building, but also we will be creating 147, all the economists figure out these numbers for us, so I trust it. 147, we call them hammer-ready jobs because this building is much farther along than a shovel, and likely 32 new jobs in an ongoing sense for the community and for the state of Minnesota. So, safe, sound, and smart. Safe because that's what we need to do for families in Minnesota. Sound because it's going to increase services, and smart because it's going to decrease costs. And finally, we hope not only put these folks to work because we need them, but also put others to work to make families safe. Thank you, Governor, for everything you've done and for including us.
Thank you very well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like that phrase, hammer-ready jobs, and that's a good segue because Tim Stender is a carpenter, and he's here with his son, Mitch, to represent and thank you all who are back there in the building trades who are here today. Really appreciate your taking the time to be here. And Tim?
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, folks. My name is Tim Stender. I'm a member of Carpenters Local 68, the Interior Systems Local for the state of Minnesota. And I'm here today to both thank the Governor for last year's bonding that put lots of my fellow brothers and sisters in the union back to work, but also to support him on next year's bonding. Anything that Mr. Dayton or Governor Dayton can do to help the struggling construction workers in Minnesota would be great. I've been laid off since Thanksgiving, and I know I'm anxious to get back on a job site. Construction jobs supply good, high-paying jobs to the working-class Minnesotan families. My son here is with me today. Construction supplies not only a livable wage, but it also gives medical benefits that allow him to see the doctor or go to the dentist. So I just want to thank the Governor for all he's done for Minnesota. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you.
And now, as someone who needs no introduction, Commissioner Showalter.
Thank you, Governor. Nonetheless, my name is Jim Showalter, Commissioner of Management and Budget, and I'm going to give you just a couple of pieces of information, particularly for those of you who are not as familiar with the capital budget, because as you can tell, the capital budget recommendations are a collection of compelling stories. They're a collection of compelling projects, each with profound statewide and local impacts. And each of those has been reviewed by the Governor over the preceding months and is collected here in a set of recommendations that total $775 million in general obligation bonding, money that's from the general fund with the full faith and credit of the state behind it. Above and beyond that, though, are about $903 million in total bonding. That includes the state GO portion, but it includes other funding sources like trunk highway funds for trunk highway roads. Some of the projects that have support by the University of Minnesota and MnSCU. So total bonding authorization here is $903 million. That's not the end of the story, though. If these recommendations were passed, there are additional investments that are leveraged from the federal government, from local units of government, a total of $1.48 billion in total project source, revenue sources that would go towards it beyond the general fund obligation, general obligation bonds that the governor is recommending today. So you can tell, this is a partnership. It's a partnership at many different levels, and quite a few different projects that are being considered. All of these projects are articulated in some of the materials that you have here. We try to, in fairly short prose, talk about each of the projects, what's behind those projects, and why it's being recommended. There's also the much more lengthy and detailed analysis and numbers that go with the capital budget recommendations. Those are available on the MMB website right now. In coming together with this set of recommendations from many, more than $2 billion of requests before the governor, he used a balanced approach. So what you're going to see before you is investments in environment, investments in higher education, but priority investments in public safety as well as economic development. You're going to see a number of projects like the Austin project that hopefully will position the state for future growth, as well as projects like the Tubman project that are important statewide priorities, as well as just important local investments. Ultimately, the collection of projects will include investments for economic development through some of the traditional programs at DEED, asset preservation money at some of our state prisons, as well as new projects looking forward across the state. The map that the governor's office prepared on my right shows you the many, many projects that are included in this set of recommendations. Scattered throughout the state. By the numbers, about $277 million, or 36% of the governor's recommendations, are in greater Minnesota. $285 million, or about 37%, are in the 7-county metro area. And the balance, $213 million, is in statewide programs that go through facilities and through grant programs that can occur anywhere in the state. Ultimately, $205 million of the recommendations are in the economic development area, $159 million in higher education, $128 million in public safety, $122 million in environment, $65 million in transportation, $55 million in veterans and military affairs, and $41 million in other areas. We have listings of those projects. I think there's a story and there's a explanation and I think, compelling reason behind all of those projects. And it's a very difficult process to cull all of the ideas and all the things and balance those. And that's what the governor's recommendations do. Unlike the operating budget, you really have a complete list of all of the ideas that are out there as well. So you're going to hear lots of other competing ideas. And I think the chore and the real challenge here is to invest in programs that build the infrastructure for this state, that help create jobs now, that help our positioning in the future, and really speak to the core values of the state. I think the governor's package does that, and that is what we'll be presenting to the legislature in bill form as well.
Good, thanks. So I'll be glad to respond to questions. I'll talk about any of the projects on that map. I won't talk today about the People's Stadium. We have this event this morning, and Secretary Vilsack here this afternoon, so that's enough for one day, and I'm not ready to make a public statement about that, but you can expect something later this week. On any other subject? Go ahead. Any other subject?
Senator Senchum's already put out a statement criticizing the proposal, saying it's not a short-term stimulus jobs program. How do you expect this to play out politically, considering Republicans, presumably in the House as well, are resistant to this legislation?
Well, be critical of anything, but that seems to be the Republicans' response to every job creation proposal I put forward. Criticize, no. A short-term jobs proposal we made last week, which is a tax credit for businesses that hire unemployed people in Minnesota, $3,000 this year, the rest of this year, and $1,500 next year. That's short-term. If they pass the bonding bill, early as I've requested, those jobs will be, many of them, coming available in this calendar year. I mean, Ms. Duso said, there are projects that are hammer ready. They just need to be approved, and the bonds sold, and that can be done, and the projects can be underway this construction season. So, if they want to cooperate and be supportive of these as important job-creating initiatives, and if they have some of their own ideas, that's fine too. But just to criticize whatever it is offhandedly, I think is not contributing to the end result, which is to put people back to work in Minnesota.
How does the new regional ballpark fit into this whole plan?
That's the number one request of Mayor Coleman of St. Paul. It's a downtown revitalization project. It takes a blighted area, vacant area of downtown St. Paul and puts a economic project. So it's, again, the jobs it creates as well as the economic activity it generates after it's operational. I might say, too, if I may, just, Minneapolis, Mayor Ryback's top priority request for the downtown was refurbishing the Nicollet Mall. I've put in, as I did last year, the Civic Center projects for Rochester, for Mankato, and for St. Cloud. And I was just mystified last year when the response of the Republicans in the legislature, at least the majority, was, well, we don't want to believe in helping downtowns. Well, I learned from my father and my uncles, who were pretty successful job creators in Minnesota, the importance of focusing on downtowns and constantly pushing to revitalize them, because otherwise you end up with a donut effect. Development naturally goes to greenfield sites outside of the downtown, but if you lose the core of the downtown, you lose the vitality of the region. And so I put these projects in again, and I hope the legislature will look at them, and if they don't want to take my word for it, they can consult with my father or with other business leaders who understand the importance to business and to jobs and to economic vitality of downtown revitalization projects.
Governor, regarding light rail, it's always been tough to get that through. Southwest corridor is one that's especially difficult right now. Why is that important?
Well, because we need to continue to develop the lines. I was back when I just came into the Senate 11 years ago. They just were starting the red line, the Hiawatha line, and I had my reservations. But once that decision was made, and we were into it, then we're into it. So in order to make it a viable, both economically and functionally, you have to have other lines intersecting, as most places do. So I think this is an area where you've got major traffic congestion coming into the city, and if the people or at least the leadership in that area of the region don't want it, there would be opportunities elsewhere, and I would just point to them. The experience they have those in Georgetown and Washington, D.C., who rose up to oppose any of the subways in Washington going through their area, their neighborhoods, and now that they don't have it, they wish they did, because it greatly facilitates access to the rest of the city. And similarly, I think it'd be very short-sighted for leaders in that region to rule out something that could really be an important component of an overall transportation system.
That's exactly one of the criticisms, that they say it is not cost efficient, that this is not cost effective because you spend a lot more than people will pay for it.
Well, most public transit systems in the country, virtually all of them, need some sort of public support to operate. The question you could ask people who are stuck in traffic jams in their cars is, are you willing to pay X amount more in tax dollars to reduce the number of cars on the road by 1/3, say, during rush hours? And I think you'd find most commuters would see that as a benefit to them as well as a benefit to the society. So I think if the trade-off is that if you just have no other alternative than driving a car, then you've got that many more cars on the road. Now, buses are a good alternative, and they're one component as well. But we've made the commitment to light rail. If we would that we had done it back when the Metropolitan Council first recommended it, which was about 40 years ago, we'd have it done today. But that's obviously didn't happen. So if we're looking for what our children and grandchildren can utilize 40 years from now, then that's where the perspective we need to take on completing this intersecting development around the region.
Are there any specific projects?
Is there any significance in the fact that you've got one of the single biggest bonding projects, $35 million for the Rochester Mayor's Civic Center, happens to be in the home district of the Senate Majority Leader, who's already criticized your bonding bill?
Well, he was the chair of the Capital Committee, Capital Investment Committee of the Senate last year, and I had it in there, and it didn't come through the process. So I believe in the downtowns. I debated because I don't see any sign that, and I have a very good relationship with the Majority Leader, and I don't hold him. There's nobody individually responsible, but I debated putting these downtown projects in, since as the Commissioner said, we had over $2 billion of requests, most of them really excellent, and to put those in the mix, so if there was not a likelihood of their being chosen. But what I just said earlier, I believe in downtowns. I believe this is one of the essential roles that government plays in assisting the construction of projects that are going to produce an incredible economic return to the state in the private sector, commercial activity, the jobs it provides. Rochester and Olmsted County send, I don't know the exact number, but hundreds of millions of dollars more to the state in taxes they generate and revenues they generate than they get back in local government aid, county aid, and the school funding. So Rochester, why wouldn't we do, the Mayo's the largest private employer in the state. Why wouldn't we invest $35 million to bring a multiple return for decades to come? Is just beyond me.
Governor, you have a request in here for a new emergency operations center out in Arden Hills. Why is that important? Would that replace the one that is in downtown St. Paul right now?
I defer either to Commissioner Scholler or Commissioner Doman. Is Commissioner of Public Safety is the one who believes strongly in that, but I'll turn it over to. But she would be the person to contact if you want some more detailed justification for it.
Well, just from what you know, is that facility deficient, the current one?
I don't know.
It absolutely is deficient. The federal government.
Go ahead.
Sure. The current Emergency Operations Center is in St. Paul, and its location is deficient in a number of different directions, in different ways. Has been noted that it's not up to the standards of the federal government. I don't think it's up to necessarily the expectations of the state either. So this project would completely replace the current EOC in a freestanding facility that would be used by multiple agencies, but particularly emergency response, coordinated response of emergencies.
Commissioner Doman said one of the other, and General Nash, I believe, too, would say that one of the other desirable features is the proximity then of the National Guard site to this new site right up there in Arden Hills.
Are there any projects you see as specifically non-negotiable must-have as you look at this list?
Only 775 million of them. It's all negotiable. That's the process. Actually, when we finally got the leadership commitment on both House and Senate took till July, but as part of the final agreement to have a bonding bill, it was really a very it's a difficult process because you have to fit so many good projects into a smaller amount available, but it was really a collaborative one. The requirement for 60% of majority in each body means it has to be a bipartisan collaboration, and it was, and the House and Senate DFL and Republican leaders worked together and with us, and they got some of what the projects that they wanted, and we got some of what we wanted, and I expect the same thing to happen this time.
Governor, this package includes $13 million, $13.5 million for this Capitol building. Do you plan to offer a second recommendation for the Capitol in light of last week's commission report? And what's your view generally about the needs of this building?
Well, I hope the Commissioner is going to test his timeline, this outrageous timeline that they had, which required me to, the day before Christmas, come to a conclusion. So it was done. Then obviously this was finalized well before this meeting last week. The $13.5 million is for just basically emergency repairs. Replace things that are otherwise going to fall on somebody's head. So that has to go on whether or not anything further is approved. But I concur, with the recommendations made last week, and I trust the experts to the analysis that if we don't get on top of this now, we're just going to have lost the cause for decades to come, and this building's going to, increasingly deteriorate, and it's going to be increasingly dangerous for people who work here and people who have business to do here and people who visit here. So, I believe we need to take on either all of it or a good part of it in this year, so we have made an upfront commitment and an irrevocable commitment to the contractor and to all the people who will get involved in making this project happen, that we're committed to it and we're going to see it through. I don't look forward to it. It's 3 or 4 years, up to 3 or 4 years spent out of here and somewhere else out there. And it's going to be seriously inconvenient for all of us who are working here now. But it's our responsibility to future generations to commit to doing this. Let's do it right. It's only going to be more costly if we put it off for a decade. And again, I think that's extremely ill-advised.
Will you talk about how you decided that you and the MnSCU projects? Do you go down a list and stop after a certain number? Do you pick and choose? Did you go with their list? How did you do that?
Pretty much reflects their priorities. The University of Minnesota's top priority was this heating duct, which they say is essential so that if the one system they have now, the whole heating of the whole university, depends on one duct, one system. If that were to break down, everybody would be cold. So, it's not a fancy high-tech thing like last time, with the university, but that was absolutely their number one priority. And then they wanted the money for, I hate the term, the HEPRA, but asset preservation. There was just basic upkeep, and I think President Kaler has respectfully said that he is disappointed there isn't more money in there for that. They did get $30 million for it in the last bonding bill, so $50 million total. But I mean, those buildings are also deteriorating and need support. MnSCU, we went pretty much, I'd say, I can't think of an exception through their list of priorities until we kind of balanced out the university and MnSCU.
Governor, can you say on this 21,700 new jobs estimates, can you say roughly how many of those would be permanent jobs?
Well, Tim, you could speak better to that than I. I mean, permanent jobs in the building trades is kind of a misnomer. I mean, you get a job and the project lasts for 6 months, and then there needs to be another one. I mean, why don't you speak to that?
In construction, you're always working yourself out of a job. From the day you get on that site to the day you leave, you're looking for the next construction job. It's different than most careers, but it's a good career, and you don't have to look far. All you have to do is drive down to the University of Minnesota and see my brothers working on the science building that Mr. Dayton funded last year. It does put jobs for working-class families. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in fairness, the legislature very much as well, and Speaker Zellers was a strong proponent of that project. It's one of the reasons it came through as it did. So, good point.
Governor, my recollection is that during the campaign you said you would have a $1 billion bonding bill each of your first 2 years. Even if every single dollar in this is fulfilled, you will fall well short of that. Are you going back on a campaign promise?
If I said $1 billion in each of the 2 years, then I'm falling short of that. But given the fiscal realities of the state right now and the additional $750 million of inappropriate and should have been unnecessary bonding to handle the debt for the budget through the tobacco bonds, I think that what the budget forecasts allowed in interest is the maximum that we can do and still be fiscally responsible. So, did fall short of that, but again, I didn't anticipate. My campaign promise is also, to raise taxes on the wealthiest to 2% of Minnesotans, and if that had happened, then we would have needed to do that kind of borrowing, and then our credit rating would have fallen, and then there'd probably be other opportunities. But